and hopefully we're live. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good middle of the night, wherever you're tuning in from. If you're tuning in, if you are, welcome. Hello, my name's Ross. Another learning with line 6 this evening. Let's do the awkward bit. So there's like a 10 or 15 second delay. So just let me know that you can hear my interesting voice and that the sound is okay. This is what my voice sounds like. This is what the guitar sounds like. Is it all okay? And if someone is here, let me know that everything level-wise is all good, and we will adjust and make things all nice and work for you. So tonight, I'll just get cracking. Tonight we're going to, it's tonight here by the way, evening Brandon and Daniel, yeah, morning. We're going to talk about FRFR. So, can hear you, but guitar is much, much louder than my voice. That's a good thing. Voice is way quieter than guitar. Right, okay, give me a mo. So I'll turn my voice up, and I'll turn the guitar down. How's that? Versus my voice. Any good? Any good? I'll maybe give it a little bit more juice on the voice. It's always a bit of a guessing game with this. That should be a bit louder with my my voice. Let me move my mic up. Sorry, it's going to be loud. Guitar's still significantly louder. Okay, I'll turn that down. I'll turn it up in the room. Some buzz as well from your guitar. Yeah, Nick, that's just lights and single coil pickups, unfortunately. I'll give my voice even more juice. Voice still too low. Okay. Right, hopefully, and I'll just try and talk louder and move my mic closer. There we go. This is the guitar. Are we all good? Are we there? Brilliant, thank you. Right, shall we crack on? So FRFR, if you're new to modelling and kind of doing the full modelling route, you may have heard the term FRFR, excuse me, but you might not know what it stands for, you might not know what it is. You might have tried it and not got on with it, and we're going to kind of cover a little bit of that today. What it is, what it does, why it's there, the difference between that and a regular kind of guitar rig, and this is kind of coming. Some of this is, or a lot of this is theory. Some of it is my own personal preferences, as always, because a lot of this is subjective. So I do encourage you to kind of try this. And there are certain rules if you come in from a tube amp rig and a pedal board to a modelling unit and an FRFR system. It's different. It is different, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that as well. So FRFR, what is it? FRFR stands for Full Range Flat Response. So essentially, when you're buying, and there are companies out there now that are branding a particular product, an FRFR speaker, it's essentially a PA speaker. A lot of them rebranded. So yeah, the kind of the top, main kind of 12 or 15 inch PA speaker that would use for everything on a gig, that's essentially what it is. And the design of it isn't actually that great to be used as a guitar thing. And massive props, by the way, to my good buddy John Cordy, who kind of helped me out with tonight's subject. Helped me put some of this into words rather than me just waffling as usual, which I will probably waffle, so apologies. Now, what a PA cab is designed to do is throw sound a long way. So the stage is kind of here and the audience is all the way back there. And what a PA speaker is designed to do is make that sound hit the back of the room and you've got the main kind of speaker driver, and you've got the tweeter in close proximity. Now, over a long distance, they kind of blend together quite nicely. Now, if you're kind of 2 or 3 feet from that speaker, it doesn't quite blend as well. Now, it's different with studio monitors because they're designed to kind of blend close together, be near field. PA speakers are different. So it's actually not the best application. And if you've ever sort of used a regular kind of guitar amp rig, tube amp rig, and you put a mic in front of it, and then you've had that coming back through a wedge, it normally sounds pretty terrible. In my experience, even worse through in-ear monitors as well. But as far as a wedge goes, or a monitor system, they don't sound that great, and you'll hear people talking about this. I mean, Steve Vai has spoken about this in a few kind of different interviews and rig rundowns and stuff. So what Steve did was actually take a feed from his rig into another tube power amp, and had, I think it was Carvin, made him sort of monitor style guitar speakers. So when he was hearing his guitar, it was as he intended, not with a mic and preamps and however long cable and so on and so forth. So it will sound different, and kind of that's what a lot of people don't really, or why a lot of people don't get on with it, and myself included. I did not like FRFR for the longest time, and then kind of figured it out, and it worked great. So that's essentially what, full range flat response. It's a PA speaker. It's not designed to be in such close proximity to your ear. And when you're using a kind of a regular guitar amp, it's normally behind you. It's normally lower down than ear level, so you're listening to the speaker off axis. And you're also listening to the speaker in a wooden cabinet versus a lot of the FRFR speakers now are plastic. Some of the wood are wooden, but it's not kind of connecting in the same way. And you'll find a metal grill, whereas, again, mostly, there are exceptions as always, you'll find on a guitar cab any different number of grill cloth. When you're looking at something like basket weave, that's really thick and juicy, so that's going to shave off a whole ton of frequencies too. With FRFR as well, something to bear in mind, I see a ton of people using the Yamaha stuff, which is fantastic, thank you. And we will talk about Power Cab as well in a little while. But there's a ton now of FRFR speakers kind of aimed at guitar players in the modeling world, which is great. Loads of choice, fantastic. Just bear in mind, not all of them are created equal. Volume is always an interesting one, and I learned this a long time ago when I was kind of getting into the PA thing. You might kind of see something that says, oh, it's 1,000 watts. It's not 1,000 watts. It might be 250 or 500. If you are looking at wattage, which is part of kind of what you want to be looking at, because obviously volume to a point, look at the RMS rating. Don't look at the peak, because the peak is the absolute maximum that speaker will ever put out, and when it's putting out that kind of wattage, it won't sound very good. It's going to be clipping and just sound a little bit nasty. So look at the RMS rating. That's kind of where you're going to be living really as far as a wattage rating. But look at the SPL, or the sound pressure level, as well. So if you're getting up to like 120 something dB, that's pretty pokey. That's pretty pokey for sure. And also remember, and I've kind of made this point again in the past, and I think some of the other guys have had. Once again, if you're coming from a tube amp rig and you're going to a modeling device in an FRFR and you expect it to sound like the amp in the room, you are going to be disappointed, because it isn't the same. You're not hearing the raw speaker. You're hearing kind of our model or someone else's model of that amp with a particular mic in front of it, and then what other preamps and processing goes after that. Even with IRs, there's still kind of limitations. So you're hearing the full signal chain as if you were hearing that amp mic'd up. Does that make sense? That was a lot of words, sorry. But hopefully, yeah, if you kind of listen back, hopefully it'll make sense. So that's kind of FR in a nutshell, and hopefully kind of how it differs from a regular guitar speaker. Now, again, guitar speakers, they produce certain frequencies, and if you look on Celestian's website or EV's website or ToneTubby or whoever, you're gonna see that frequency response. And if you look at the frequency response of pretty much any FR, you'll see that it goes way over and above what a regular speaker will put out. Now, a speaker model or a cab model within Helix, or again any modeling device, it will kind of give you that response to a point, but it will still kind of go over and above, because the speaker cabinet, the FR you're using, will be kind of filling in the gaps. And that's where I see a lot of people kind of struggling, particularly live, to get their sound dialed in and sit with the band. So kind of a couple of subjects, if you read the thing, was kind of dialing out the fizz and boom and how to sit in the mix. Now, there's two fairly crucial things you need to do with this, is play at volume, right? Don't kind of, get your FR and get it all, and it'll sound fantastic in your lounge or your bedroom or studio or whatever, at kind of bedroom levels. When you get out to a gig or you put it in with a band, that's when things like the Fletcher-Munson curve come in, and everything is accentuated, high end and low end. So be aware of that. If you're playing at volume, you can automatically compensate for that. And if anything, it's better to be louder than quieter, for me, in my experience. I've said a lot. Coffee, excuse. So play at volume, and if at all possible, play in context. So play with your band, particularly things like drums, bass and keys. That's your band. Stupid thing to say, apologies. Especially keys take up massive kind of low end and high end. Obviously, drums and cymbals kind of take up certain frequencies. Bass will take up the low end. And you need to kind of fit somewhere in the middle, and traditionally that's usually mids. And when you're using kind of full range stuff, that's always the thing that I found lacking, and what I hear so many people kind of miss is the mids of a regular guitar amp. So I'll kind of show you a couple of ways around that. Yes, you can use EQ, but it's not really kind of fixing the problem, because you're not getting rid of them. I'll demonstrate in a sec. So hopefully that's going to make sense. But what I'll show you now, kind of, this is going to help you sit in the mix kind of quicker, but you're also going to get rid of that fizz and boom. And I've got a few sounds kind of dialed in that are kind of extreme settings, so you'll hopefully hear what I'm talking about. Like I say, sitting in the mix, that's kind of half the beauty of modeling. If you've just been out and bought a very kind of American sounding amp, or British sounding amp, and you're playing in a band that particular tone doesn't really sit with, then you're kind of stuffed, that you've only got that. With the modeling, you can very quickly go, oh, okay, well, I need this sort of thing that will sit better with the frequency. If it's a Hammond, that does frequencies, or synths, or whatever. I'm waffling, apologies. Right, so here I have my HX Edit. I'll try and keep an eye on the comments and move over here. Excuse me while I move screens around. The awkward bit, there we go. Right, so you can see I'm using Stomp XL. This is a signal chain, so it's fairly simple. I put that in for fun, because why not? So guitar comes in, I've got a compressor, I've got 3 dirt boxes because fun. The amp I'm using is my favorite, the Cali Texas Channel 1. It just does a ton of stuff and takes pedals really well. We've got a chorus and then just a little bit of spring reverb on there, or talent as I call it. So they're the settings on the amp. And I have selected the Interstate 212 because that's kind of, I like that cab. Now, again, 212 cabs. Okay, just clock that one. Sorry, Corey. I'll turn my voice up even more. Oh, hopefully that's a little bit better. Or maybe move the mic a little closer as well. Hopefully that's a little bit better for you. Right, so the Interstate 212, it's my favourite cab. It just does a ton of stuff, and with the different mics, you can just get a load of different sounds. Now, if I actually go back into that, so this is the default when you load that cab up. So we actually changed the low and the high cut. Now this is kind of what you want to pay attention to, really. And this is, it's going to tighten up the low end and get rid of that boom, and it's going to shave off that fizz as well. Which again, that's kind of when you've got massive low frequencies and massive high frequencies, that's where the fizz and boom comes from, and that's where your guitar gets lost. I hear that so many times. Modeling doesn't move air, digital stuff just kind of, it's fizzy or it's boomy or whatever, and it doesn't kind of feel the same. And so much of that comes from the mids. So I'm actually going to take the low and the high cut off, just to kind of show you some extreme settings. So, the room. There we go. Mark sucks to be at work. I want to come back and listen. Mark, you can come back and listen. This will be live on the YouTube and Facebook channels when I'm done, eventually. So, watch at your leisure. Merry Christmas. So there's my clean sound. Just compressor into the amp. I'm climbing up. And then I've got kind of a on the edge of breakup. It's all sounding good so far. We've got that with 808, so it's kind of smooth and no, Kinky Boost, I changed it, there you go. Kind of beefier, and then Snapshot 4 is kind of a bit more metally. Now, I mean, that sort of in the room, certainly here, actually sounds pretty good. You know, it's beefy and it's crispy and it's got clarity, cleans up great. So that, we'll stick on this sound for a minute. That is the Hedgehog. And again, some kind of extreme settings. Now, this particular distortion pedal, if you've played with it, is very picky, and it certainly generally wouldn't be used with kind of a black-facey kind of circuit, which is what the Cali Texas is. So to kind of get anything like a nice creamy kind of MIDI sound, yeah, it's a distortion pedal. It's not really built for that, but that actually sounds okay. Now, if I take that out and I put that through an FRFR of, you know, any size, 10, 12 or 15 inch, doesn't really matter, whatever construction, and I stand a few feet away from it, that's just going to be boomy and sizzly and just a little bit too nasty. So what I want to do, I'm going to go to the cab and you'll hear the difference. So the actual mic, I'm going to leave the mic as the 421. Now that mic as well is actually, it's a crispy mic. Again, if you don't just look at the frequency responses for speakers, look at the frequency responses for mics as well, and you'll kind of hear that, you'll hear that kind of crispiness just looking at the chart. So this is what I do, and this instantly kind of, because I'm coming from you know, a regular amp background, that's what I'm used to hearing, which is why the FRFR thing didn't work until I actually figured this out. What I want to do, I actually want to make that FRFR speaker sound like a guitar amp, so it's more like what I'm used to hearing on stage. You can always compensate out front because remember you're going into a mixer and you can boost bass or whatever, but if you're using a full PA you've got subs, so that's going to handle the low end. But you don't need as much bottom end as you might think because that's what the bass is doing and the subs for the PA and so on and so forth. So this is generally what I do. I get the low cut and like I said, the default was sort of 80 hertz. So that's what it sounds like there. The default, where it was at 80, give or take a bit. Now you won't hear, even if you're listening on really awesome quality speakers, you're not going to hear a huge amount of difference in that. I'm going to take it to the extreme. I'm going to sit somewhere around here. So this is with the low cut off. Somewhere around there. Now again, this is just compression on YouTube and Facebook and everything. This is not going to come across brilliantly, but I urge you to try it because what's happening there, like I say, it's not, the sound isn't getting any smaller, right? It's not like it's kind of going and just putting that low cut on is just making my sound small and weak. Again, sort of without, big and beefy, with big and beefy. And I'm going to do the same with the high cut. Now, this is the range I would normally sit in with this particular mic. And you'll definitely hear when you've gone too far or not far enough. So I want that clarity, but I want rid of that kind of fizzy kind of top end. So there you go, I've gone too far. That's too dark now. And that's going to kind of do the same thing. The low end's tight, but excuse me, the low end's nice and tight, but you know, I've just shaved too much top end, so there's no clarity. So there. So I've still got clarity, but that fizziness is gone. So that's 5K versus. It's not darker. And again, it's going to be so difficult. So take a look at the settings and then go and try it. It's not too dark, but it's just getting rid of that kind of super sizzly top end. That for some things you might want or you might need to cut through, but yeah, it just kind of nicens everything out a little bit, and it gives you much more what a regular guitar speaker would put out. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's check. Still confused. What's the difference between FRFR and a power cab? Are they different or is it the same? So, okay, FRFR versus power cab. An FRFR is, like I said earlier, in case you came in late, a PA speaker. Need more coffee for this. Power cab is something a bit more special. So power cab does the FRFR thing, right? You've got a main driver and you've got a tweeter in there. And you've got a couple of different modes where it utilizes that. So you've got the regular FRFR and then modes within that that you can check out. And then you've got the IR mode, which is essentially FRFR, but the ability to load in impulse responses into the cab. So if you're actually using a modeling device that doesn't load in IRs, then you can do that, or a preamp system or something. But remember, power cab's not just for a modeling device or Helix or anything. If you've got a rack preamp or a pedal preamp or something, then you can put that into it as well, load up an IR, and you're laughing. It's going to sound fantastic, and I've done that as well, and it's great. But power cab also has a speaker mode, and that suits me. That's kind of where I live with power cab. I'll use the speaker mode because you know, it moves a bit more air, or it moves air. It sounds more 3D to my ears. The speaker tends to work with the guitar a little bit more. You know, what I'm showing now for the FRFR thing is fantastic. and it will get you a hell of a lot closer. But what Power Cab in speaker mode does, it basically gets rid of the high frequency driver and just essentially puts a curve on for sounding like, you know, a bunch of different speakers. And that's quite interesting because that's kind of the only thing I'll change on a preset now. I did a gig last night and it was fantastic, and I'd not touched the rig since the last gig. What I had to do was go in and actually change the speaker model because it was too dark for that room last night, whereas the room before, that was the right speaker model. So it was a brighter room. So I think I changed it to the EVH. So I got a little bit more kind of sparkle on the top end, a little bit more low end. Because that's what the room kind of does. Now that's kind of the dream with a regular guitar cab, is being able to rip a speaker out and replace it kind of on cue, or carry around multiple speakers. You know, why wouldn't you do that? Oh, because 4x12s are really heavy. And, you know, a lot of us don't gig on massive stages. So, you know, Power Cab's beautiful for that. So, yeah, it does the FRR thing really, really well, but it also has speaker mode. And there's a ton of other things in there, like you could use it as an interface. You can, with the Power Cab 212, you've got stereo rig in there. And I mean, a ton of different things. You can mix and match speakers. You can do a load of different stuff. There's a mode called LF Raw, which actually gives you, that's pretty cool, because if you wanted to go with a cabinet model on Helix or whatever, and then go into LF Raw, then you're still getting all the cabinet and all the mic stuff, but it's making it kind of a little bit more palatable to, you know, old school valve amp users. So yeah, Power Cab is a hell of a lot more versatile than just a standard FRFR. Generally what you will get on an FRFR is volume, maybe some kind of EQ tweaks, maybe a low cut, maybe a high cut on there. Sometimes there's kind of a different mode for whether you're using it as a monitor or front house. Again, not all FRFRs are created equal. And for anyone that came in late, something that I mentioned earlier, if you're expecting to come from a 100-watt valve head through a 4x12 and, you know, get an HX stomp and a 10-inch kind of PA speaker and it sound the same, it's not going to. You know, you have to kind of, you know, understand that there's going to be some compromises and whatever. But I can tell you from experience, carrying a 100-watt valve head and a 4x12 and a massive pedal board is a lot harder. I was going to say something terrible then. It's not as easy as carrying a stomp round with a little bitty 10-inch speaker. So yeah, it is different for sure, but you know, try and be a little bit realistic with your expectations. But I mean, the kind of key points, it's like, look, if you've got a modeling thing and you're going through an FRFR, bear in mind that that PA speaker isn't kind of designed to be so close to you. So you have to compensate with a few different things, and that low and high cut is where I would always start. Because again, what you're going to see by doing this, remember, I'm just shaving off all the frequencies below like 150 hertz and above sort of 5k. Now remember, like if we imagine this is the bit in the middle, right? There's all your mids, so they're not changing, they're static. So by doing that and getting rid of all these other frequencies, all these mid frequencies are basically kind of coming forward, and that's where you're going to cut through, and that's where you're going to kind of sit with keyboards and cymbals. You're going to get above the bass player, and then obviously kind of, yeah, maybe a mid boost for a solo, because louder, bigger, better, more. I hope that makes sense. I'll kind of give you a couple more examples on the tone thing. So on the clean sound, once again, you know, just to show you, depending on what you're listening to as well, better speakers or kind of decent headphones or whatever, this might come across a little bit better. If it doesn't, kind of half proves the point, but kind of load up and try this yourself. So if we do the same thing with a clean sound, so that's absolutely perfectly fine. By doing this, same kind of thing. Now instantly that's still big and round and it's still clear, but those mids in the room here, those mids have just gone, here I am. And that's going to help me kind of get over all the other stuff. Because we're guitar players, we want to be louder than the rest of the band, you know, we want to be at the front and rock stars and whatever. Maybe not. Another example, we'll take that kind of plexi-ish thing. So that, by the way, I've talked about this before. My favorite, the Heir Apparent, not touched the amp settings at all. That's what the amp settings are. So the Heir Apparent, I got it in overdrive mode and it sounds like that. So that's the, and then I want a similar sound, but I want to tighten up the low end, shave off the fizziness. Like I say, it's not, the sound hasn't got smaller. It's not really lost its kind of beef or girth. It's just kind of shaved off those kind of super fizzy high-end frequencies and tightened up that low end. Because remember, your bass guitarist, and to a point keys, is going to take up all of those low frequencies. So if you're producing frequencies that are that low, you're just going to interfere and it's just going to be a mess of sound and not be very clear or nice. So don't worry about getting into some extreme settings with that low and the high cut. Same with IRs, and it doesn't matter which cab you use, the theory is the same. You know, like I say, I'm using the 212 in state because I like it. You might find that those settings are going to be different per cab. Some of them are going to be fizzier, some of them are going to be warmer or beefier or not as warm or whatever. So just kind of play it by ear. But it's really important that when you're programming these sounds, do it at volume, and if possible, do it with the band, kind of in context, in a rehearsal room, or you know, even at a gig before soundcheck or whatever. Get those sounds to volume, and you're going to be much, much, much happier. If you start at home, then you know, again, turn it up as loud as you can, but try and play with a backing track or something if you can't get the band round, and that's going to get you somewhere close, basically. And then you're a lot closer. You're going to be able to sit in the mix a lot quicker when you get to the gig or rehearsal studio. So that's kind of that. Hopefully all of that made sense. Feel-wise, you know, the FRFR thing might feel a little bit different, and some of that is because of the way the power amp works. So a tube amp is has a low damping factor. That's where the kind of squishiness comes in, and a PA speaker has a very high damping factor, so it's a lot more immediate. And again, it's designed to kind of push the sound in a very, very long distance. So bear that in mind, and that's when you kind of get into things like the sag controls coming really handy for that stuff, just kind of getting that feel dialed in. Don't know what those comments are. I'm totally sorry. So hopefully I didn't waffle too much and that made some sense. Don't be worried about FRFR on digital. You know, it can work, and it can work incredibly well. And I see people all the time kind of saying it's the best thing ever, it's the best sound. But like I say, if you're struggling or you've tried it and you don't like it, it's worth going back and kind of using some of these techniques. I think you'll find you'll be a lot happier. Shave off some of those lows, shave off some of those highs. Be kind of mindful about the kind of gear that you're going to be using, which models and whatever, and just kind of get used to it and have fun, because it's supposed to have fun. That's it from me. Apologies if I couldn't get my voice loud enough. Yeah, I'll work on that for the next one. I think this might be the last one for this year. We might have Nick or Tony up next week, so keep your eyes peeled. Hope everyone's safe and well. Happy holidays. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next year. Take care of yourselves.